Assalamu alaikum, students. Okay, today we'll discuss the last topic of this block, that is the lymphatic system. So this is a much more easy lecture, so I have kept it at the last. So this will be your last lecture in the uh, the anatomy embryology system. Okay. So the lymphatic system is a network of lymphoid organs. So lymphatic system, as you know, system means it involves many organs and tissues. Okay, so it involves, this lymphatic system involves the thymus. These are the lymphatic organs: thymus, spleen, and tonsil. Thymus will be present in the neck, below the neck, in the anterior chest wall, here somewhere below the thyroid gland. Then we have the spleen, which will be present in the abdomen. Then the tonsils, which are present in the oral cavity. So these are the lymphatic organs. Along with these lymphatic organs, there will be lymph nodes everywhere. As you know, there are cervical, axillary, then the inguinal, popliteal, different kinds of lymph nodes are there. So those lymph nodes will be also part of the lymphatic system. Then we have the lymphatic ducts, the large vessels as well as the lymphatic vessels. All these are the thin vessels, very small vessels spread throughout the body. They are in huge quantity, very thin vessels, and the largest of them will be called as the lymphatic duct. We will talk about them later. Okay. So the lymphatic organs, including the thymus, spleen, tonsil, lymph nodes, lymph ducts, lymphatic vessels that make and move the lymph from tissue to tissue to the bloodstream. So it is a part of the cardiovascular system, where a part of the tissue fluid which has flown from the heart into the different cells will go back into the circulatory system. So the lymphatic system is a major part of the body's immune system. This is a very important component for the defensive mechanism, immune system, which involves the defensive mechanism, which can fight against, our body can fight against the bacteria, viruses, and any foreign particles. Now coming to the lymphatic system, as you know, the heart will be pumping the oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. It will go to all the cells and tissues, and then it flows through the capillaries. Then it will return back to the through the venous system back into the heart. A small quantity of fluid will flow through the tissues into the tissues as tissue fluid, and that doesn't return back into the venous system, but it will flow through a separate channel, finally passing into different lymph nodes and finally draining into the back into the circulation. So this separate separate system, where the tissue fluid will flow back into the cardiovascular system, this is called as the lymphatic system. Here, when it is flowing, it will be filtered by the lymph nodes. We'll talk about them, all those things. Okay. So here, these are the lymphatic duct, the large vessels, and the smaller will be called as the lymphatic vessels. Coming to the lymphatic trunks and ducts, as I said, the lymphatic trunks will be somewhat larger vessels. These are the jugular, subclavian, bronchomediastinal, intestinal, and lumbar. Okay. Later I'll show you the pictures where we can see the jugular, subclavian. Jugular will be coming from the head and neck lymphatic system. Subclavian will drain the upper limb. Bronchomediastinal will be draining the chest. The intestinal will be draining the abdomen, and the lumbar will be draining the lower limbs. So these are the somewhat larger ducts, vessels, and the largest among them will be the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. We'll see them also. The right lymphatic duct, which will flow, drain into the right subclavian vein and the right internal jugular, junction between the right subclavian and the right internal jugular. And the thoracic duct will drain similarly on the left side into left subclavian and the left interjugular vein. The beginning of the thoracic duct will be cisterna chyli and drains most of the body. We'll show all those things. Okay. So later I will show you all those parts where how it begins, how it ends. So before going into details about that, so just will I try to understand some more concepts of the lymphatic system. Coming to the something called as lymph. What is this lymph? So it is nothing but the plasma from the capillaries passing out of the interstitial space, the space between the cells. So if you see here, the blood will be flowing through the cells and tissues, and it will drain the blood into the cells and tissues. Then it will return back as the venous system. Small quantity of fluid will remain as the interstitial fluid or the tissue fluid in between the interstitial spaces. So the plasma from the capillaries, these are capillaries, plasma from the capillaries passes out into the interstitial space, the space between the cells, to supply the cells with oxygen. Here will be the cells, so it will be supplying the oxygen and nutritions and remove the carbon dioxide and waste products. So it will flow, the blood will flow like this, and it will drain, the plasma fluid especially will flow into between the cells and tissues to supply with oxygen and nutrition. Almost 85% of the plasma that moved out of the capillaries return back to the capillaries within the remaining. So if you see here, almost 85% of what had drained into the cells and tissue will return back into the venous system. But a small quantity, the remaining 15%, will return to the circulation through the lymphatic vessels. So around a small quantity, that is 15%, will flow through a separate channel and finally return to the circulatory system. So this remaining 15%, this fluid will be, it will not be, because even though it is part of the blood system, because it doesn't have the RBCs and WBC, this will be clear watery fluid because it is nothing but the just the plasma which has flown into the cells and tissue. So this fluid will be called as lymph. It will be a clear watery fluid, similar in composition to the plasma because it is mainly plasma. So it will be having the similar composition to the plasma, and it will be clear watery fluid even though it is coming from the blood. So it will not be red because it doesn't have the RBCs, only the plasma will be there. Okay, that's why it will be clear watery fluid. This fluid is called as lymph. So the fluid which is flowing through the lymphatic channels, this is called as lymph, and it will be clear watery fluid. Now coming to the functions of the lymph. What are the functions of the lymph? Why there is lymphatic system? Why do we have the lymphatic system in our body? One is to maintain the blood volume. If you see here, every time there will be almost 15% will leak out and it will not return back. So if there is no separate channel, then there will be, every time there will be decrease in blood. Okay, so every time if they keep on decreasing, then it will lead to lot of shortage of the blood. Okay, almost 5.5 liters of blood is present there. So if there is, every time there is leaking, then it will lead to decrease in the blood. So what is the function of the lymphatic system is to maintain the blood volume by returning this 15% back into the circulatory system. So it will maintain the blood volume, so it will not decrease in the volume. So it will maintain the blood volume. This is the function of the lymph. Okay, lymphatic system. So it transports the plasma protein that seeps out of the capillary beds back into the bloodstream. So the small quantity of the plasma fluid which had remained here, it will be returned back into the circulatory system. So it maintains the blood volume. The second is the elimination. So what does it eliminate? It also carries away large particles, example like the bacteria and the cell debris from the damaged tissues, which can then be filtered out and destroyed by the lymph node. So it will eliminate the bacteria and the viruses as well as the dead cells, cell debris, wastage of the cells. All those will be removed by what? Lymph nodes. So when it is flowing through this, so it will be filtered by lymph node. There are lymph nodes here, which will be filtering the plasma fluid or the lymph. So this is the function of the lymph node, that they will filter the lymph. So it will eliminate the bacteria, viruses, damaged cells, and debris. The third is it increases the immunity. How does the lymph increases the immunity? The lymph contains lymphocytes which circulate in the lymphatic system. Actually, the lymph nodes here, these will have the lot of lymphocytes. They will be draining lymphocytes into the this lymph. So there will be increase in the lymphocytes in this lymph, and this will be carried back into the circulatory system. So now there are more lymphocytes in the body, so it increases the immunity. It increases the immunity. Fourth function is absorption of the fatty acids, especially in the abdomen. If you see, the fats absorbed into the lymphatic give the lymph a milky appearance. Especially absorption is mainly in the abdomen, right? In the stomach, in the small intestine, and to some extent into the large intestine. So where the all the fat absorbed will be flowing through the lymphatics. Okay, and usually the lymph will be clear fluid, clear water fluid. But here, because of the presence of fat which are absorbed from the intestine, it looks milky. It looks milky appearance. So now this fluid is not called as lymph, but it has a special name called as chyle, because it is whitish in color. Now coming to the lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic begin from the space between the cells and end into the circulatory system. If you have seen, so the lymphatic system. So here, if you see the cardiovascular system, it is a continuous process, no break. But if you see the lymphatic system, it begins from the cells and tissues and end in the circulation. So it begins here in the cells and tissues and end in the circulatory system. Okay. So the lymphatic vessels begin from the spaces between the cells and end into the venous system, that is the blood circulation. So the lymphatic vessels, like veins, have valves. Okay, just like the veins have valves, what is the function of valve? They will help in the unidirectional flow of the fluid, whatever fluid. In case of the vessel, in case of the veins, it will be the blood, but in case of lymphatic vessels, it will be the lymph. So it will help, the valves will help in the unidirectional flow. If it is especially against the gravity from the lower part of the body flowing against the gravity to the heart, so it needs to have valves. So lymphatic vessels will have valves, and they collect into the main trunks. All these lymphatic vessels will collect into main trunks. There are two important trunks. One is called as the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. These are the two largest ducts, largest vessels of the lymphatic system: thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. Now if you see here, this is the thoracic duct. So these are the only two vessels, lymphatic vessels, which can be seen by the naked eyes. Thoracic duct, because it is large. The thoracic duct begins here, goes all the way and opens here. And then here is the right lymphatic duct, right lymphatic duct. So it will be opening on the left side. So here is the same picture shown here. So this is the thoracic duct going all the way. It is in the posterior chest wall, going all the way and opens into the venous system. Now we'll see in detail what happens to this. The thoracic duct is a dilated lymph channel about 40 centimeters long. So if you see, measure from beginning to end, so it will be a long lymphatic vessel, almost 40 centimeters long. It arises or rises from the sac called as the cisterna chyli. So it begins from the abdomen like a bag. So that's why it is called as cisterna chyli. Cistern means a bag like. Chyli, because I said, especially from the abdomen when it is flowing, it will be having chyle. Chyle is nothing but the fat within the lymph. Okay, so which gives the milky appearance. So this is called as cisterna chyli, which begins from the abdomen. So if you see here, here also you can see is the cisterna chyli. Cisterna chyli begin from the abdomen, then goes into the thoracic region. This is the thoracic duct. The thoracic duct. So the thoracic duct begins from the cisterna, a sac called as cisterna chyli, which lies in front of the bodies of the first two lumbar vertebrae. Lumbar vertebrae are in the abdomen and under the diaphragm, below the diaphragm. So below the diaphragm, so it will begin here, cisterna chyli. From there is the beginning of the thoracic duct. It opens into the left subclavian vein. Now it goes all the way on the right side of the posterior chest wall, then goes towards the left side. And then if you see here, it opens at the junction between two veins. Which are these two veins? One is the internal jugular vein and the left subclavian vein. Left internal jugular and left subclavian. So at the junction between these two, so is the opening of the thoracic duct. Okay. So beginning way of this thoracic duct will be from the cisterna chyli, and the end will be into the junction between the subclavian and the left internal jugular vein. Okay. So it opens into the left subclavian vein and it drains lymph from both the legs, the pelvis, the abdominal cavities, the left half of the thorax, head and neck, and arms. If you see here, this whole green area. So most of the parts of the body are drained by this thoracic duct. Both the legs, as you can see here, these are both the legs. Then the pelvis, this is the pelvis. Then the abdominal cavity, this is the abdominal cavity. Then left half of the thorax, left side of the thorax, head and neck, left side of the head and neck, and the left arm. So all these are drained by the thoracic duct. So major part of the body is drained by the thoracic duct. Then what about this remaining yellowish region? So that is drained by the right lymphatic duct. Right lymphatic duct. It is a dilated lymph vessel about just 1 centimeter. If you see here, thoracic duct is 40 centimeter, but right lymphatic duct is just 1 centimeter long. If you see here, so this is the thoracic duct going all the way opening here, but the right thoracic duct is very short. This is the size of the right lymphatic thoracic duct, which will drain this part of this region. Okay. So the right lymphatic duct is a dilated lymph vessel about just 1 centimeter long. This is 40 centimeter. This is 1 centimeter. It lies in the root of the neck toward the right side. It opens into the junction again between the similar junction here. So here it was left. Here it will be just right. Right internal jugular and right subclavian. So similar junction. Okay, even though it is very short, so it will open into similar region at the junction between the right subclavian and the right internal jugular vein. So that is the opening of the right lymphatic duct. So this will drain the lymph from the right half of the thorax. So this right lymphatic duct will drain the right half of the thorax, the right side of the head and neck, and the right arm. So these three regions are drained by the right lymphatic duct. Now coming to the lymph nodes. Lymph nodes. Okay. So that was about the lymphatic vessels and the two largest vessels, thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. Now coming to the lymph nodes. Okay, the lymph node is an oval-shaped organ of the lymphatic system distributed widely throughout the body. So as you know, the lymph nodes are distributed throughout the body and present everywhere. Okay, they filter the lymph. So as I said before, so the lymph will be flowing through this lymph nodes and it will be filtered by the lymph nodes, and these lymph nodes also add the lymphocytes. So there are two types of lymph nodes. One is called as palpable lymph nodes and the non-palpable. Palpable means if they are enlarged, you can feel them. Okay, so those are called as palpable. Those which cannot be felt, which are deep inside, those are called as non-palpable. Palpable lymph nodes are cervical, axillary, inguinal, epitrochlear, and popliteal. And the non-palpable nodes are the mediastinal, mesenteric, and paraaortic. Now, if you see this picture, the green colored are the palpable, which are superficial, which can be palpated. So these are the palpable. Non-palpable are deep inside. So the palpable will be the cervical group of lymph nodes, supraclavicular, then axillary, epitrochlear. These are the inguinal. These are called as popliteal. All these are the palpable. No examination of a patient is complete unless you examine this palpable lymph nodes. Then there are non-palpable lymph nodes. Non-palpable means they are deep inside. We cannot palpate them. We can only see them by the ultrasound or the CT scans. Okay, so these are the non-palpable, which are colorless. Here, if you can see here, they are mediastinal around the heart. There are lymph nodes which cannot be felt. Then they are around the abdomen, especially around the aorta. So they are called as pre-aortic, para-aortic group of lymph nodes. Okay, common iliac, extra-iliac, intra-iliac, all these are the group of lymph nodes which are present in the thorax and abdomen, which cannot be felt. So these are called as non-palpable lymph nodes. So there are two types of lymph nodes, palpable and non-palpable. Palpable will be cervical, axillary, inguinal, epitrochlear, and popliteal. Non-palpable will be mediastinal, mesenteric, para-aortic. All these are the some of the group of lymph nodes. Now coming to the functions of the lymph nodes, we have already studied. One is they filter the lymph which is passing through that, and phagocyte. So they will, phagocyte means engulf or eat up the microbes like the bacteria, viruses, as well as the damaged tissue cells. Okay, the damaged and dead cells all are eaten by these by the or removed by the lymph nodes. Okay, the filter as well as phagocyte. The second is the proliferation of the lymphocytes. The lymphocytes will proliferate, will increase in number so that they can be added into the lymph. Okay, which can increase the immunity. So these are the two important functions of the lymph nodes. Now coming to the structure of the lymph node, if you cut and section and see under the microscope, histologically, how do you see these lymph nodes? So this is how it looks like. Okay, so it will have an outer capsule. Outside there will be a capsule. So this is the capsule of the fibrous tissue which dips down into the node forming trabecula. If you see here, this capsule will dip down and this will form something called as trabeculae, which will divide the lymph nodes into smaller lobes and lobules in complete division. The main substance of the node consists of reticular and the lymphatic tissue. If you see here, this is the lymphatic tissue, and around this is called as the reticular tissue. So these are the two types of tissue which are present within the lymph node. One is the lymphatic tissue, that is proliferation of the lymphocytes will be taking place here, and then there is reticular tissue and lymphatic tissue. So the main substance of the node consists of the reticular tissue and the lymphatic tissue containing lymphocytes and macrophages. So it will contain mainly the lymphocytes as well as the macrophages, which can engulf the all the dead cells as well as the microbes. There are 4 or 5 afferent lymph nodes, lymph vessels. So afferent means which are draining into the lymph nodes. Those are called as afferent lymph vessels. So they will be draining so that the lymph which is passing through them can be filtered in this lymph node. So there will be 4 or 5 afferent lymph vessels which might enter the lymph nodes, but only one will be efferent. Efferent means which will be filtered and leaving out. So there will be only one efferent vessel, but there will be many afferent vessels, okay, which are opening into this, get filtered up, cleaned up, then only one efferent vessel will leave the hilum of the lymph node. Each node has a connective concave surface called as the hilum. So there is a hilum. So hilum, every organ has a hilum. So hilum is that area where the structures will enter or leave. Okay. So there will be concave surface called as the hilum, where an artery enters a vein and different lymph vessels will be leaving. As you can see, only the different vessel can be seen, but artery, vein can also be seen at the hilum. Okay. So that is the structure of the hilum. It has a capsule, then trabeculae. Inside we have the lymphatic tissue, reticular tissue, and many afferent vessels, but only one efferent vessel. Now, the next lymphatic organ will be the, after the lymph nodes, will be the spleen. Spleen. So this is the spleen here, which is present in the abdomen. This is how it looks like if you take a section and study under the microscope. Okay, so in the left hypochondric region of the abdominal cavity, usually the spleen is present in the left hypochondrium. Okay, okay. Before we have seen, so it will be present here in the first slide. You can see here, this is the position of the spleen. It will be present in the left hypochondrium of the abdomen. Okay, so it will be present in left hypochondrium region of the abdominal cavity, and usually the size will be 12 centimeters long, 7 centimeters wide, and almost 2.5 centimeters thickness, and the weight is almost 200 grams for the spleen. The structure of the spleen is very similar to that of the lymph nodes. It is enclosed by a fibroelastic capsule. Fibroelastic capsule is there that dips into the organ forming trabeculae, just like the lymph nodes. Here also there are trabeculae. Okay. The cellular material consists of the lymphocytes and the macrophages. Here, the cellular material will consist of the lymphocytes and the macrophages. Reticular tissue is very less. Okay, mainly the lymphocytes and macrophages. The structure enters and leaving the spleen at the hilum. So here, just like the lymph node, every organ, as I said, has a hilum where the structures will be either entering or coming out. So here you can see the structures leaving and entering the spleen at the hilum are the splenic artery. As you can see here, is the splenic artery, a branch of the celiac artery, then the splenic vein will be there. Then we have the lymphatic vessels, and then also there will be nerves, which are not shown here. So there will be nerves, artery, vein, and the lymphatics. Everything will be either entering or coming out of the organ. That is called as the hilum. Okay, this is the hilum of the spleen. So here you can see here, this is the hilum of the spleen, where the splenic artery is going inside and the splenic vein is coming out. Okay, this is called as the hilum. Coming to the functions of the spleen, so the main function of the spleen is phagocytosis. Phagocytosis, as I said before, phagocytosis means it will eat and engulf the bacteria, virus, dead cells, and other things. Okay, that is called as phagocytosis. Then it also helps in the storage of blood. Okay, the spleen stores around 350 ml of blood. It can rapidly return this large volume to the circulation in case of the hemorrhage. If there is hemorrhage or bleeding, if there is minor hemorrhage, then small quantity of blood which is present here, out of the 5.5 liters, 350 ml of blood is present here. So that will be returned to the circulation so that the blood can be compensated. But if there is severe bleeding, then this blood will not help much. Okay, so it helps in the phagocytosis spleen, then it also helps in the storage of the blood. Then it also increases the immune response because it will have the lymphocytes, so it will increase the immune response as well as the erythropoiesis. In case of the fetus, not in case of adult, in case of the fetus and early life, so the spleen has the capacity to erythropoiesis. What do we mean by erythropoiesis? It has the capacity to produce the RBCs. So that is called as the erythropoiesis. Erythro means the red blood cells. Poiesis means the production. Okay. So these are some of the functions of the spleen. One is phagocytosis. Second is the storage of the blood. The third is immune response, and the fourth is the erythropoiesis. Now going to the third lymphatic organ, that is the thymus. Thymus is present below the neck, as I said, below the thyroid gland. This is the thyroid gland in the neck. Below that, this is the thymus. Thymus very much looks like the thyroid gland, but this is the thymus here, which is present in the lower part of neck and in the anterior chest wall. The position is upper part of the mediastinum behind the sternum, as I said, in the upper part of the chest wall behind the sternum. It weighs very less. It is a very small gland or organ of which is almost 10 to 15 grams. That's all. It is just 10 to 15 grams at birth and grows until puberty reaches puberty. So initially at birth it will be 10 to 15 grams, reaches the maximum size at puberty when it begins to atrophy. After that it starts atrophying. Its maximum weight at puberty is between 30 to 40 grams. From 10 to 15 grams, it reaches the maximum of only 30 to 40 grams in case of puberty. After that, it starts atrophying and degenerating, and by the middle age, it has returned approximately its weight at the birth. So it will go back to the early weight of 10 to 15 grams, and sometimes totally it degenerates and atrophies. So it will have no function in case of the middle age. So if you see the structure of this thymus gland, again histologically through the microscope, the structure, the thymus consists of two lobes. As you can see here, there are two lobes. Here also you can see two lobes. Just like the thyroid gland has two lobes, the thymus also has two lobes joined by the areolar tissue. In between will be the fat. The lobes are enclosed by fibrous capsule, just like other lymphatic organs, the lymph nodes, the spleen, and other structures. This also has a fibrous capsule, which dips into the substance, dividing it into lobes and lobules. Here also you can see there are septums or trabeculae, which will divide the whole of the thymus gland incompletely into lobes and lobules. That consists of irregular branching framework of the epithelial cells and the lymphocyte. So this gland, if you study under microscope, you can see the lymphocytes as well as the epithelial cells. So what is the function of the thymus gland? Why there is this small gland reaches up to puberty, the maximum size, then degenerate? What is the function? So if you see, the lymphocytes originate from the pluripotent stem cells in the red bone marrow. Those that enter the thymus develop into activated T lymphocytes. So it is very important that the lymphocytes which go into the thymus, they modify themselves into a very special type of lymphocytes. Okay, these are called as the T lymphocytes, which are produced or developed within the thymus. So this organ will help in the production of the T lymphocytes. There are two types of lymphocytes, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. These lymphocytes are produced in the bone marrow. But those lymphocytes which reach the thymus, they modify themselves into activated T lymphocytes. So that's why T stands for thymus. Okay. The thymic processing produces mature T lymphocytes that can distinguish self tissue from the foreign tissue, and also provides each T lymphocyte with the ability to react to only one specific antigen from the millions it will encounter. So these, what are the use of these T lymphocytes which are produced in the thymus? This can help in the identification self tissue from the foreign tissue. So it differentiates between the self tissue and foreign tissue, and it has the ability to fight with this foreign bacteria, viruses, or whatever foreign body. Okay, so each T lymphocyte has the ability to reach one specific antigen. So for each type of foreign body, there will be one T lymphocyte produced, or the one type of lymphocytes. So from the millions, it will encounter. So each T lymphocytes or each group of T lymphocyte will have the capacity to fight some kind of antigen, very specific to one type. Okay, out of the millions of foreign bodies. So it needs these T lymphocytes, which are very much essential for the defensive mechanism. Now coming to the next lymphatic organ, that is the tonsil, which is present near around the oral cavity. So large cluster of lymphatic cells and extracellular matrix that are not completely surrounded by a connective tissue capsule. So these tonsils, like other lymphatic organs, which are completely covered by capsule, but these are not completely covered by a capsule. Okay, so there are a group of clusters of lymphatic cells which are not completely covered by the tissue capsule. Consist of multiple germinal centers and have invaginated outer edges called as crypts. So they will have crypts, outer crypts, which will open into the oral cavity. What is the function of this crypt? Crypt means a burrow or a hole. Crypt helps in trapping the material and facilitate identification by the lymphocytes. So each food particle which enters the mouth, it will be trapped by these crypts, and it will try to identify whether it is foreign body or self. Okay. And it forms a protective ring around the pharynx. Around the pharynx, these will be forming a ring, which is called as the Walder's ring, and it will be protective in nature. So what are these ring? One is the pharyngeal tonsil. If you see here in the nasal cavity, because the air which we respire also can have the bacteria and virus. So there are pharyngeal tonsils at the roof of the nasal cavity, which are also called as adenoids, or in the posterior wall of the nasopharynx here. Then palatine tonsil around the oral cavity or in the posterior lateral region of the oral cavity. Then lingual tonsil or along the posterior one third of the tongue. The posterior one third of the tongue will be filled with the lymphocytes, and this is called a lingual tonsil. Lingual means lingula means tongue. So lingual tonsil, because there are group of lymphocytes within the tongue, so this is called as the lingual tonsil, especially the posterior one third of the tongue. So all these together form a ring, which is called as the Walder's ring, which is a protective ring. Any food or the air which enters the body is monitored by this protective ring, and they'll act as the first line of defense. Now coming to the lymphatic nodules. Apart from these lymphatic organs, there are oval clusters of lymphatic cells with some extracellular matrix that are not surrounded by any connective tissue capsule. So you have seen the lymphatic organs completely covered by the capsule. Then we have seen the tonsils which are incompletely covered. And now here we are seeing the lymphatic nodules which are not covered by any capsule, no capsule, but they are scattered everywhere. Okay. They also filter and attack the antigen in their own capacity. These lymphatic nodules will also have the capacity to filter and attack antigen. In some areas of the body, many lymphatic nodules groups together to form the larger structures. So in the many parts, they will be arranged into larger cluster of cells. Like in case of the intestine and the respiratory mucosa, you can see mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, which is called as MALT. Okay. In the small intestine, they will be present as gut associated lymphoid tissue, and especially they form a patches in the ileum called as the Peyer's patches, which are very important in case of the typhoid fever. So these Peyer's patches is nothing but the aggregation of the lymphatic nodules. And also you can see huge aggregation of the lymphatic nodules in the ileum where there are Peyer's patches, as well as in the appendix also. Okay, so they are not in the form of a organ. Okay, but they are just patches of the lymphoid tissue. Okay. Finally, coming to the clinical aspect, why this lymphatic system is so important clinically, because it can be blocked. These lymphatic vessels can be obstructed, and then it can lead to a lot of complications. Lymphatic vessels, there are a huge number of lymphatic vessels throughout the body. So if they are blocked, they are obstructed by some worms, like the some kind of worms, then it leads to a condition called as elephantiasis, where there will be huge accumulation of the tissue fluid in one of the limbs, and it looks like the leg of an elephant. That's why it's called as the elephantiasis, where the lower limb is blocked, the lymphatic vessels are blocked in the lower limb. Okay. Similarly, in case of the cancer of the breast, carcinoma of the breast, it can lead to a peculiar condition called as PUD orange, where the lymphatic vessels are blocked, and that leads to orange-like appearance of the mammary gland, the breast. Okay, so it looks like orange skin. Okay, so that's why it is called as PUD orange, the skin of the orange, because of the blockage of the lymphatic system. Similarly, if there is blockage of the lymphatic system in the scrotum, so it leads to a huge elephantiasis of the scrotum. So here there is elephantiasis of the lower limb as well as the scrotum also. So all these are because of the obstruction of the lymphatic vessels. So these are some of the clinical aspects related to this lymphatic vessels. So this is all about the lymphatic system, the lymphatic organs, lymphatic tissue, lymphatic lymph nodes, lymphatic vessels, and lymphatic ducts. The largest two will being the thoracic duct as well as the right lymphatic ducts, and then the lymphatic organs like the spleen, lymph nodes, the thymus, the lymph nodes, all those things. Okay, then we studied the clinical aspects, especially when there is obstruction of the lymphatic vessels. So this is all about this lecture. If you have any doubts regarding this, you can ask me now. Okay, so no doubts. Okay then. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, 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 Kaukab. Okay, I will give you the attendance. Don't worry. Don't. I will mark it. Inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you all.